Hey guys, my name is Jonathan with JWaltPhotography.com, and today I'm showing you the best explanation of the exposure triangle, period. Or at least that's what I named the video. Okay, before we jump in too much, let me show you what I have here and why it's going to help you understanding the exposure triangle. Right here we have the perfect exposure. Aperture, ISO, shutter speed, and light. Perfect exposure is where your light meter is going to say your image is correctly exposed. Aperture is the opening in your camera or your lens. ISO is the sensitivity of your sensor to the light. And shutter speed is how long the sensor is exposed to the light, and light is red Kool-Aid.
Oh yeah!
Light is what is available out there. Let's get going in this. Every piece of the exposure triangle, aperture, ISO, shutter speed, has its benefits and its downfalls. Whenever these work together, let's focus on these. Whenever these work together, you gotta create a balance. Every image, you need to understand which is most important, whether it's aperture, ISO, or shutter speed. Aperture, being the opening in your lens, determines at, for instance, f2.8, how wide the aperture or opening is, and f22 is going to be how narrow the aperture is. While the most narrow aperture has everything in focus, it takes a lot of light to use. The wider aperture, f2.8, it even goes further than this. This is just for demonstration purposes. The f2.8 lets in a lot of light, but narrows down the depth of field. So at f2.8, you might be able to take a picture of my face, but the wall behind me is blurry. At f22, you would see everything in the image in focus. ISO, your sensor's sensitivity to light. At ISO 100, it's not very sensitive. At ISO 6400, it is very sensitive. So for instance, at ISO 100, your image is going to look nice and smooth if it's correctly exposed. At ISO 6400, your image will start to see grain in it, and it also depends on your sensor whether or not it will be a lot of grain or a little bit of grain, but just know the more ISO you introduce, the more grain there will be in your image. The less ISO, the less grain. And last but not least is shutter speed. With me being in music photography, this bad boy either makes me or breaks me on my images. Down here at the bottom, we see 1/2000th of a second. That means the sensor, when it flashes inside of the behind the lens on the camera, it is only exposed to the light for 1/2000th of a second. So whatever movement or lack thereof that happened in that flash of a second will be captured. And the same thing as you move up, you introduce more light on all of these as you move up. But with this one, the downfall is that you start getting motion with the more light you let in. So for instance, on the top of this is 1/30th of a second. If you're taking a picture of something that's quick moving and it's exposed for 1/30th of a second, it's going to have a lot of motion blur in there. So knowing that each one of these directly works with the other, these are the three that make up the triangle, okay? They don't have to be in any specific order, but you do need to think about which one is most important to getting the image you want. And this is one of the huge benefits of shooting in manual, is you get to decide that. When you shoot in auto, your light goes into the light meter and says, okay, here's perfect exposure. And then it just puts it in wherever. It doesn't take your creative mind into account for that. So we've got over here, we've got perfect exposure. And now, so this is our light meter saying, this is the image and it will create a perfect exposure. But because we're shooting in manual, we have to decide what gets what of all this light.
Oh yeah!
So let's think of an image, for instance, maybe I recently took a picture of my kid doing a kickflip. Okay, he was moving kind of quick. I wanted him in focus and separated from the background, and I wanted the image to be nice and smooth because it was a cool memory. So how would I put this together to take that image? Well, I gotta think of the one that is the most important factor. ISO, does it have to be smooth? Not really. Aperture, does it have to be a shallow depth of field? No. Shutter speed, yes. A kid doing a kickflip that's blurry won't be a good picture at all. So that is the most important to me. So I'm gonna make that my priority in the exposure triangle. So let me decide the number I think I need to get. Let's shoot for 1/500th of a second. That's fast. And the more you play around with your camera, the more you'll understand exactly what you can shoot at these numbers and what you can't. But for now, I'm just showing you the relationships between them. Okay, so now we got this much light to share between ISO and aperture. We have to use it. It can't just stay in the glass. So I got the shutter speed where I want it. And I guess with ISO, I don't need too much of it. So we'll just fill it to 100, where my camera starts. And we have to use the rest of it, so let's just throw the rest of it in aperture. Okay. So just with that in mind, we now have an image that will work and be perfectly exposed. So I might look at this and go, the depth of field at 5.6 or whatever it is on here is a little too deep. I want to pull it back at f2.8. To get to f2.8 though, I need more light. Again, my Kool-Aid is light. I've got to take from one of the other two. I have no ISO to give. All out. I'm all the way down to what my camera can do. So I would have to take from shutter speed. Okay, so introducing more light on this is going to take away light on this, but it will balance. Okay, so if I just took this away and poured the stuff back in there, I'm going to be underexposed. But since I understand that this liquid is light and it has to go from one place to the other, no matter what combination I do it in, it will be properly exposed. Okay, so now I'm gonna go all the way up to 2.8. Okay, that puts me at a shutter speed of 1/2000th of a second at f2.8 ISO 100. Great, let's snap some photos of him. Oh crap, f2.8 is too shallow. He keeps moving closer to me before I can take the picture. It's fast, I'm capturing the motion, it's just not in focus because my depth of field is too little. So how could I do this? And again, I'm just showing you different examples. So I need to get rid of some of the light in the aperture, or I need to open up stop down, make it more narrow on the aperture so more is in focus. So, how can I do this? I'll throw it in the ISO bucket. Okay, because I want to keep that fast speed. So now I'm at ISO 400 and f6, 1/2000th of a second. Yes, this works too. Because I used the light meter for perfect exposure, I know that no matter how I divvy it up, I'm going to be able to get the right shot or get correct exposure. Now, correct exposure and a great photo are two very, very different things. That is why you have to think about which is more important. Maybe in this one I want to stop it down a little bit more so more is in focus in the image. So now we're at 1/500th shutter speed, still fast enough to catch a kickflip. 400 ISO, not bad, there's not going to be a lot of grain in my image. And an aperture of f11, that works. Now it's time to take the image. Pop, pop, top. We have a perfectly exposed image, and we created it using the exposure triangle. I hope that helps you understand the exposure triangle, and that if you take from one, you are getting both the good and the bad with what you introduce to it. If I take away from ISO, I'm getting a smoother image, but I'm either going to put more light in the shutter speed and introduce motion, or I'm going to lose depth of field. Maybe I'm getting rid of shutter speed and I'm getting rid of some of that, so I'm making it faster. So those have to go somewhere. So if I put it in the aperture side, the depth of field is going to get shorter or smaller, shallower. If I put it on the ISO, it's going to introduce noise into my image. And with aperture, if I want to take away and make more stuff in focus, it's going to either make me have to use a slower shutter speed to capture the image, which could use or could introduce blur, or it's going to make me introduce grain into my image. So that's been my explanation on the exposure triangle, and hopefully you can now see the relationship of how each one acts independently, and whenever you add or take away from each one, how it then must influence one of the others. It doesn't matter which order these are in. When you take one away or add to one, it has to influence another to get correct exposure. There's only one correct exposure. So you have to decide what is most important, what is secondly most important, and then what is least important in your image. And you have to start dividing the light between those three. Thank you so much for watching. If you've learned something in this, please be sure to like and subscribe. It helps me understand what you need and what you want for content. This video was made specifically for my Facebook group, or a Facebook group that I'm in for beginners and amateur photographers. I get the question on exposure triangle every single day, and I just wanted a way to demonstrate and show you guys how I do that. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good one.
Oh yeah!